Time for a new installment of Change My Mind, where we rationalize our positions on parole. Frog legs. Right here, if you're not familiar with them, I understand that you're a fan of is the change of sign. So, Evan, nice to meet you. Public park, last I checked, the First Amendment still applies, so I did it anyway. What are they going to do? Well, you'll see. Nothing. Here's Evan. Oh, you're Evan. Okay, for some reason I was thinking, hey, Evan. Nice to meet you, sir. All right. So, Evan, do you mind moving in a little bit? Just
yeah.
All right, I don't want you to think that I'm not hitting on you or anything. No. So, we've done broad, sort of general, I'm pro Second Amendment, change my minds.
Yeah.
Like I was saying earlier, we didn't expect
the executive order.
Yeah, the executive order, so we didn't change a sign. But these are the executive orders right here. If you're not familiar with them, you can peruse them because we want to make sure that. Look, I'm not. What we do, I don't know how familiar. The last thing everyone want to do is like, I gotcha.
Yeah,
and I don't expect everyone to be familiar with them. So you can kind of look at them, and I think that it's nonsense. Particularly, from what I understand, that you're a fan of is the national red flag laws.
Yeah, I do want to talk about that.
All right.
So, clarification question: with this red flag law, does that not make a national mandate of a red flag law in 60 days? Or
they can't make a national mandate. This is basically sort of setting a template, and then eventually they're going to try and. A lot of it is executive orders, and then some of it is also pushing Congress. For example, they want people to be able to sue gun manufacturers. They want that was something that he was, but I don't think you can do that through executive action. But the national red flag law, he's trying to exert pressure, and he wants to start with a template.
Yeah. So my opinion is that we should have a national red flag law, and obviously the process for it needs to be regulated through a court system to make sure that it was justly enforced to take their take the guns away. And I would assume that you would believe that is government overstep.
Well, I think we already have that system in place. It's not a red flag law.
Okay. Well, what is it then?
So have you purchased firearms?
Yes.
Okay. So you know about the background check that you go through. Okay. So I think we're starting off on common ground then, because at the time when he gave the executive orders, he said people buying guns without background checks.
That's not true.
It's not true. I know it's not true. And with that background check, they're making sure that you are of age, right? They're making sure that you are not a criminal. Right now in this country, you cannot purchase a firearm legally if you're a felon, if you're a violent domestic abuser, or if you've already been adjudicated mentally defective by a judge or court of law. I think those are pretty good standards. And I think
shout out Big Wave Dave, man. I thought you would appreciate this one. He says, no touching my firearms. Yeah, big 2A guy in the chat, man.
If we want to talk about filling in the gaps, I would be open to hearing how you would do that and it not be a violation of constitutional rights.
Yeah.
But this right here goes far beyond that scope. I mean, I think that's a pretty good standard there where we know, okay, felony, we agree. Domestic violence, that's domestic abuse, that's violence. For example, he also said, domestic abuse. Now, if you're talking about people getting into a tussle or people being verbally abusive, that's very different from an actual violent domestic abuser. You can't legally purchase a firearm. And then if you've been by a court order adjudicated mentally defective, you can't purchase a firearm. How would you add to that, I guess?
So what I would add to that is, first of all, the reason for it is you say constitutional overstep, personal rights overstep by the government. And with all the gun violence that's happened this year, as you probably know, it's been 4 times the national average, in previous years. And so
violence, period.
Yeah.
Not gun violence.
Yeah.
Violence.
Okay. So I would say that is similar. I wouldn't say it's perfect.
Shout out Don's. You ain't have too much to say. Just wanted to show some support with $1. We appreciate it.
Basically the same to what happened with 9/11 and the NSA Act, where they started monitoring potential terrorists. So are these people considered potential terrorists? Who knows? But they would still be able to purchase firearms if you're a citizen of the U.S. Yeah. And you can pass that background check. Because
and by the way, I was against the Patriot. I thought I was for the Patriot Act, and then that's when I changed my mind.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So a couple of I'm just trying. So no to the Patriot Act, no to spying on Americans, and no to everything you just said. Let me explain to you why.
Okay.
Crime has been consistently going down, right?
Yeah.
Crime was going down before the assault weapons ban. It was going down after the assault weapons ban. We have 1 year with a blip. We had a year in 2016 with a blip, and this last year with a blip. Okay. You said it was gun crime. It's not.
Okay.
It's for the same reason. There were $2 billion just in business damages, hundreds of officer casualties, dozens of murders, and thousands of arrests at the riots that took place over the summer alone. Okay, I'm not disagreeing with you that the homicide rate went up 2,000% in Portland. I'm not disagreeing with you that the violent crime went up over 100% in places like New York and Minneapolis or Milwaukee, where they defunded the police. But to suggest that that's because of law-abiding American citizens who own firearms, I mean, there's a reason that more Black Americans have purchased firearms in the last year than ever in American history.
And shout out Don's, man. $2. He said most gun violence is done with illegal guns. Get the fuck out of here. Hey. Yeah. Yeah, it ain't too many law-abiding citizens out there just blasting that gat. You definitely make a good point.
People who are...
That's statistically back, too. That is actually a statistical fact right there.
The victims of these riots and this increasing violent crime is a solution.
Okay.
Think about it. Illegal guns, illegal gun ownership, criminals. Those are all things that go hand in hand. And the people that are probably out here just shooting willy-nilly aren't law-abiding citizens using guns in their name that were legally purchased. And shout out Fox Chase coming back in with $2. He said, laws don't stop criminals. It's exactly what I'm saying right now. It ain't the guns. It ain't whether they were purchased legally or illegally. It's the people whose hands they end up in. They don't give a fuck. You're a criminal, man. You're going to do what a criminal does, and that's purport crime.
I mean, is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
Would you agree with me that there wasn't a sudden rise in just angry white mass shooters, that there is a correlation with 1 year spike, and that can be directly, traced to the defunding of police, the allowing of violent riots? I mean,
I would say that it's a tough one. I'm just trying to get my thoughts together.
No, okay. Well, look, I'll tell you this. Assume I'm not lying. Statistically, it's undeniable.
Yeah.
Statistically, it was the most violent summer.
I believe that you're telling me the truth.
Or the summer of love, as I said in Seattle.
Oh, God. Yeah. So it's still about the psychiatric background. I know that gun violence might not have gone up, but I still think it's...
Shout out Big Wave Dave, $2. Gun laws only affect the law-abiding citizens. That is very true. That is very true. The more restrictive gun laws they put on us, they just kind of put law-abiding citizens at a disadvantage because, like Fox Chase said, if you're a criminal, you think you give a F about a gun law? The gun that you probably illegally acquired that maybe already has a dirty body on it or two. Like, man, I could tell you stories about people got 10 felonies, but man, they strapped up to the T. Ain't none of them guns legal, and they didn't get it in any type of legal way. But yeah, these are the people you should be worrying about, not a law-abiding citizen. If anything, they're gonna think 2-3 times about pulling their gun out and using it. A law-abiding citizen will, versus a criminal who they quick to shoot first, ask questions later. Or matter of fact, when it's time to be asking questions, they're not going to be around because they ran away like criminals do. Shout out Dave, $2. Gun laws only affect the law-abiding citizens. And another $2 who said gun laws are unconstitutional. We got Second Amendment, and that's all we need, honestly. You got Dave Smith, who joked and said, man, as long as it's up to city code, you should be able to own a nuclear bomb. You should be able to own a tactical nuke as long as it's up to city code in your garage. Now, he's a Second Amendment absolutionist and was damn near being satirical when he said that, but I get the idea behind it. Like, and I get what Dave is saying as well. Like these restrictive ass gun laws that they implement, damn near after, almost every 4 years or after every mass shooting event and tragedy that we have, all too commonly in this country, unfortunately, they try and implement more restrictive gun laws that, again, only disadvantage law-abiding citizens.
Problem. So how can we fix that? And there are loopholes, as you would probably know.
What loopholes? Well, you said, first off, you support the national red flag.
Do you want to talk my proposal? So
why do you support a red flag law beyond what we already know, which is right? I need to clarify. So, felon, violent domestic abuser, already adjudicated mentally by a court. You want to add to that with a red flag law? Why?
I would like to add to that. So, doctors, if they know that their patient is a harm to themselves, they have to report that to the police if they mention anything of that. So why are they then allowed to continue to have their guns if they know they are a danger to themselves? because just because you're reported to the police doesn't mean anything's going to happen.
Right.
So,
it sounds to me like you're saying if a doctor reports to the police, they should immediately come and take your guns away.
No
due process.
No, I think there should be due process, and that there should be, like, it would have to be proven through like psychiatric evaluation that these people are suicidal, are trying to like hurt some other people then in like a mass shooting type thing. But you would have to show evidence with it and not just have it be like,
I agree with you.
Yeah.
You just argued against red flag laws.
That's fair.
No, seriously. Like you just argued. That's what adjudicated mentally defective. So the process is, but if it's self-harm, right? You report it and it goes through a process. The red flag laws, and by the way, this is sort of funny. You brought up a doctor. I have some examples here. We'll have all the sources on the website. Just assume I'm not lying to you. There's a doctor, I believe it was in New Jersey, New York, who actually had his patient, because he wrote bad Yelp reviews, had his guns taken away. So again, that's why, like you're saying, you need those processes of okay, and we have those. That's why a court needs to deem you, adjudicated mentally defective is the term. A court needs to deem you. However, the red flag laws that are proposed, and I think what we're having here is you maybe are thinking red flag laws are something different, because if you're saying, hey, someone who has already displayed violent behavior or harmful behavior, and it's proven through a system of evidence, and they go through a process where I would assume that you're saying they can face their accusers, right? Yes. However, red flag law is someone reports you, they can come and take your guns in the middle of the night. There's no trial. You've been charged with no crime, no evidence, and you don't get to face your accusers. And then after a certain amount of time, you go to court and maybe they'll let you get them back.
Okay. Do you think that just because someone hasn't committed a violent act yet, that they should still keep their guns until they do?
I think that if someone has not caused harm to someone else or themselves, or it has not been proven, like you just said, a psychiatric evaluation and then facing your accusers, right? Which is something that we already have. Yes, I don't think that you minority report and take someone's guns pre-crime. Do you think you should be able to take them pre-crime? Because then who determines who's likely to commit a criminal act?
I think it's then in the sense of national security, like the Patriot Act, where if they are planning on committing these like crimes and they have been proven through these processes, like how many people
we already have that, is my point, right? A red flag law is beyond proving it, right? The whole point is right now this can be proven. For example, if you make a death threat, that's not red flag law. You can bring that into court. If someone has started hurting themselves, right? If someone attempted suicide, that's in court right away. If someone already is a felon, tried to harm someone else, then we go through the court system. Red flag laws completely bypass the court system and put, first off, police lives in danger, because they're going and taking guns. And think about it. If you're a homeowner who don't know, they always kill the dog. You know that. That happens all the time. How many times do you see a report? And I'm a dog lover. I don't know about you. So they kill the dog, they take your guns, and then maybe at some point, even though you've been charged with no crime, you may get your guns back. You think that's okay? Because
no, that's not what I'm arguing. So I didn't exactly know that before coming in here, but I think that we need to open up the psychiatric evaluations more in our current systems, because I personally don't know how many people get like court adjudicated like insane to where they can't have guns. And there's probably a disproportionate amount of people who are insane that just haven't gone through that system yet, that need to be filtered out through the system.
I think you're I think you're probably right that there are probably some people out there who are mentally can I say defective?
Unstable.
Okay, all right. I'm going to go with defective. But yes, mentally unstable people who we don't know yet. But here's the issue. We just had someone come out here, not the only issue, but this is something to me, and I would like you to entertain this thought for a second. The person who sat down before you, Emily, said that we need to have more mental health care right in this country. And I agree, as someone who suffered from depression my whole life, I think that we need to destigmatize seeking help. I don't think we need to glorify mental health issues. For example, I don't want to be considered a hero because I have depression. It's something I have to deal with. However, let me give you this situation. These red flag laws, like as you see proposed, right? This is from the White House website. So not mine. You can go to the whitehouse.gov and read it, or it might be from their briefing room.
No problem.
Someone who has concerning thoughts, maybe let's say someone who is very depressed, someone who has considered not wanting to live anymore, someone who's embarrassed about their mental health issues, do you think they're more or less likely to seek help if they know that their constitutional right to protect themselves could be taken away if they admit to their mental health shortcomings? You'll discourage people from seeking out help.
Yeah, but can I bring up something else?
Of course.
So if you sign up in most states where medical marijuana is legal, once you receive your card, you can no longer legally purchase a firearm.
Yeah, well, which I think is ridiculous. I mean, it's a problem with federal laws and state laws.
Yeah. And so,
like Florida's like that to my knowledge.
Does that make people who would like to use medical marijuana to treat themselves, does that deter them from doing it because they won't be able to have their firearms?
Well, they just lie. And so that's my issue, right?
Exactly.
People just lie.
So there's the loophole.
You agree there's no point for a red flag law. People just lie.
Exactly. Yeah. So
it doesn't sound like you're advocating a red flag law. It sounds to me like you're advocating what we have.
Yes.
And a process
to make it more thorough.
Right.
Which I understand costs money and takes time.
Right.
Which isn't very efficient, but I think it's what's needed, what's necessary.
But you would agree that the red flag, what we're talking about, because I think you maybe had this sort of perceived idea of what a red flag law was.
I could barely overhear you while you were talking to George, and that's where I got it from.
Well, George doesn't stop. I don't know if he's still here. George doesn't stop talking. But what you perceived a red flag law to be, but I just want to make sure that I understand that now understanding that a red flag law means that your family member, your friends, your doctor can have people take your guns away, not being charged with a crime, not facing your accusers, no due process. You'd be against that.
I'd be against that.
Okay, so you're against Biden's proposal.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
I support what you're saying. I support what you're saying too.
Those people should be able to still go to the court system and put in a formal thing that these people are unstable, and then make them go through processes. Because just because you haven't gone to see a psychiatrist whenever you have schizophrenia doesn't mean you don't have schizophrenia.
It's true. And just because a jealous ex-girlfriend says you have schizophrenia doesn't mean you have schizophrenia.
True, but I think you should still be checked.
Well, I think that there should be a process which is not incredibly invasive. Otherwise, you would just have everyone who's a lover scorn saying, schizophrenia, no, you have schizophrenia, no, you're crazy, right? There needs to be a track record. And look, I think we would also have to accept that living in a free society, you're never going to catch everyone.
No.
And I think that it's a far graver sin. And this is something I think is never talked about, considering that there's 500,000 on the low end to 3 million defensive uses of firearms each year in this country.
Yeah.
And there are only 14,000 homicides each year in this country, way higher in a Black Lives Matter peaceful summer, mind you. I think it's a far graver sin to take away firearms from the overwhelming number of people who use them responsibly and defensively in order to try and catch some people. And look, you're never going to have a perfect society.
It's a needle in a haystack problem.
It is a needle in a haystack, but I do agree with you in that if a doctor can recommend it and someone goes through the court system, I think for me, what's super important, I think we both agree here, is there needs to be due process, a charge, and the ability to face your accuser. And in this case,
and defend yourself.
Yeah. That's not what they're proposing, and to me, it's terrifying.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. Was it Evan?
Yes.
Evan?
Yeah.
Evan. I appreciate it. I think we just came to some common ground. Yeah. I think it somewhat changed your mind by accident.
Yeah, by accident.
Can you give me a hug?
Yeah.
All right, thanks. Joke's on you, I have COVID. Would you look at that? Evan inadvertently changed his mind. There's plenty more to get to, but I wanted to let you know that none of these episodes take place without your support, and especially now that the entire for the show. No foreign, because it's also, we have a friend George, Jorge. Jorge, but he said he prefers George.
Fair enough.
So they announced 6 executive actions and then some proposals to Congress that they would like to see passed. You asked me which one is most concerning to me. So let me just sort of set this for people who are tuning in. We've done pretty generic, or I should say, I guess I should say more broad, change my minds on the Second Amendment. I wanted to try and focus on some of these new laws because a lot of people haven't been talking about them.
Yeah, no, that's why I asked, because I actually don't even know about them either.
Okay, so the one I think that you were talking, which one is most concerning to me, is red flag laws. And if you want to read this here, do you mind reading it out loud? I mean, you can read it for yourself, but it would help if you read it out loud. So it's this one right here.
All right. Red flag laws allow family members or law enforcement to petition for a court order temporarily barring people in crisis from accessing firearms if they present a danger to themselves or others. The president urges Congress to pass an appropriate national red flag law, as well as legislation incentivizing states to pass red flag laws of their own. In the interim, the Justice Department's published model legislation will make it easier for states that want to adopt red flag laws to do so.
Right.
So could you go over like the implications of that? Like what?
So, first off, do you want me, would it help if I expound upon the kind of red flag law is?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so what a red flag, and it varies from state to state, but that's why he wants to eventually, he's expressed the interest in having a nationalized form of federal red flag law. And what that means is effectively, there are gaps right now, right, between, for example, if you're a felon or if you're a violent domestic abuser, you cannot purchase firearms, right? What red flag laws aim to do is expand that, where a family member, a neighbor, a doctor,
just
a friend
if you're related,
could report, well, not even just related. For example, there have been some doctors or work associates could report you as someone who may be a danger to yourself or others. And so in that case, the government could seize your firearms.
Then I do see why that's concerning. Yeah.
Well, the argument, let me give you the argument that they present is, you know, if you look at, I can't remember which shooting because I know they sort of bleed together. I think it was the one in El Paso, but there were several shootings where they said, well, they called the FBI, right? And this person shouldn't have had a firearm.
Okay.
And so red flag laws would allow us to close that gap where it's this person's dangerous. They can be reported and their firearms can be, what they would argue, temporarily removed.
So if people are reporting a person, right?
Yeah.
Like, do they have to, like, is it on certain grounds that it has to be like legitimized? Like, what's the process?
That's the question.
Okay.
Right. That varies from state to state. For example, I think it was in New Jersey, you had a doctor flag one of his patients because he kept leaving them negative reviews on Yelp. And the guy had his firearms removed. So this is the issue, right? Is it varies across some states, and many states don't have red flag laws at all. But no, because I think it's pretty clear, right? If you've committed a felony or if you're a violent domestic abuser, that's another little bait and switch that Biden pulls. Like, domestic abusers shouldn't be able to get firearms. Well, if you're a violent domestic abuser, you already can't. If we're talking about someone who got into a verbal argument with their wife, I don't believe that you remove their ability to own a firearm. But no, it is subjective. And the issue that I have with it that's most concerning is they take your firearms, right? There's no due process.
Okay.
You're not even charged with it. You don't have to be charged with a crime.
You don't have to be charged.
No, you don't have to be charged with any crime, let alone convicted. You don't have to have been even mentally diagnosed or adjudicated defective. And you are not even there for the hearing. You have no opportunity to face your accusers. Then several weeks later, what they say is several weeks later, you'll have a hearing where you're allowed to make your case for getting your firearms back. So
it's after you've already been punished.
It's after they've been taken away, yeah.
Yeah, no, I do feel like that's an abridgment of the Second Amendment rights. That's why I wanted to ask about red flag, because I actually hadn't heard about it. I understand your concern then.
Right, and I
this video is a little bit older. It's a little bit dated. I think it was right after Trump had lost and Biden got in office, if I'm not mistaken, about 3 or 4 years ago. So relatively new law around that time. So everybody was kind of debating back and forth on the position, on both positions of it. So I know a lot of people kind of argue and are proponents of it simply because it takes guns and weapons out of potentially dangerous people's hands. But to a absolutionist, and I would say advocates, argue that it goes beyond constitutional rights and it kind of further extends the arm of power for the government, and it kind of allows them to do certain things unconstitutionally that they shouldn't be able to do.
I understand the reason that people,
because who's stopping? What's stopping somebody from being like, oh, he's a crazy, filing multiple reports on somebody being crazy and needing to be disarmed, and them actually doing it, which has happened in some cases.
I would think it's a good idea because they go, well, people are mentally insane.
Yeah, I mean, it's different because, like, if a doctor, I guess, notices a potential danger that their patient might pose, like, I don't know, I see it being justified if it's something like you have a patient that has schizophrenia or something, right?
Right.
Someone that could pose a danger, but I feel like they would need to have already expressed
exactly,
a potential to harm others in order for you to, like, legitimately take away their firearm.
Right. And we kind of already have that standard of crime, right? Felony
so
or
this
violent
is just
crime.
more on top of that.
And I think also, a lot of people say, well, we have a mental health crisis in this country. Well, let me ask you this. Let's say you're suffering from depression. Let's say you're suffering from, I have family members who have bipolar disorder, but they're not violent.
Yeah.
Do you think that knowing if your doctor says this guy's bipolar and they could take your guns away, do you think it would make people more likely or less likely to seek mental health assistance.
Definitely less, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we've all had rough times. Like
Yeah.
I've suffered from depression in my life. I talk about it pretty openly, but I know that if I knew that a doctor could subjectively say danger to himself, I'd probably keep it to myself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's these laws of, the rules of unintended consequences from laws.
Got it.
And does it surprise you that you haven't heard more about it, honestly, considering how...
I mean, yeah, that does seem pretty sweeping. I'm kind of surprised I haven't heard about it.
Yeah, well, this is from the website, and we make them all. This is from the White House website, their own press briefing.
Are there what else was in this?
Ghost guns.
Ghost guns. Okay.
Ghost guns in there. That's a big thing. That's the word now. Ghost guns.
You have a problem with ghost guns. You tweeted about them, right?
I don't have a problem with ghost guns.
You don't have a problem.
No, I just say ghost guns are not it's not really a thing. As far as it being an actual threat right now, an existential threat to the United States of America.
The way I understand ghost guns is that they're like you have different parts, right? And then they're assembled, but it's not serialized. It's not like
3D printed parts for guns constructed off of schematics and dynamics downloaded off of the internet. And again, they're 3D printed and the gun is constructed, and it's actually a serviceable weapon. Now, Crowder's argument isn't happening at a large enough scale for it to pose an actual threat to anybody. But these 3D guns, these ghost guns, they were a thing, and they were on the FBI's list as far as things to look out for at a certain point, because it was happening.
Recognized federally in some sort of registry. I feel like that does pose a danger, right?
Well, there is no federal registry.
Or not a federal registry.
Well, no, but this is important because a serial...
Obviously undocumented and unserialized, as the young man said. So it's hard to track, which is hence the term ghost gun.
Number. It can only trace the firearm to its original point of sale. It doesn't trace individual to individual.
Okay, got it.
I think that matters when people start off with it. And what it is, and if you look at the actual legislation, you look what he proposed, especially before he ran for office, right? The idea of ghost guns. First off, it's legal for you to make firearms at home. It's not very difficult. You have some piping and some copper wire. You can make a shotgun pretty damn easily. Believe me, I've had friends do it. I wouldn't recommend it, but it can be done.
Sure, yeah, that's legal though.
You just can't sell them. Now, here's the issue with ghost guns: is they're saying, you can buy a receiver, you can buy an upper, and effectively you can put a gun together with kits. However, if you look at their proposed auxiliary legislation, it basically makes it impossible to purchase any gun parts online because they can be used for a ghost gun.
Yeah.
Well, what if I have a safety that's broken? You might not be able to replace safety. What if I want to change the bolt?
You could just go to wherever you originally bought the gun in order to do that, right?
No, not if you make it difficult and illegal to purchase parts under the guise of them being ghost guns, and that is proposed.
Wait, but okay, like if you want to buy a safety for say, like,
or let's say like a slide lock or whatever it is. But yeah, the point is they want to make it increasingly difficult to purchase firearm parts.
Okay, if you did want that and you want to do that legally, safely, whatever, can you not just go to where you originally bought the gun? I'm confused.
No, not if you want to customize your gun, not if you want to change something on your gun. For example,
to what extent?
So, for example, I have a revolver.
Okay.
That I really like, and I have some guns that are more for practical purposes, and some that are sort of heirlooms. And the trigger was pretty rough, and so I got a trigger spring kit, and I switched out the trigger. I did a trigger job. That's the kind of thing which could very much be illegal under the guise of ghost guns, which don't make up any percentage, as far as we know, of crimes committed right now. And that's the falsehood, is the idea that, well, these crimes are being committed out there right now with these ghost guns. In other words, they want you to think there's this epidemic of guns out there that people...
They passed legislation off of the narrative that these ghost guns are being widely produced and widely used, but it actually just inhibits and further restricts law-abiding citizens and gun owners from not only customizing, but actually using their weapons. Now you can kind of understand why 2A absolutionists and proponents are just against some of this shit, and they call it out and they'll debate it all day, like my man Steven Crowder right here. Like, you can't tell me this shit makes sense when it's not even hitting its intended target.
People are creating or 3D printing. It's just not true.
Okay.
It's just not an actual threat. Matter of fact, the closest thing that I found was they said 30%. So I was trying to do research on this, and it's impossible to find. The closest number you find is they say, well, 30% of all guns now recovered, according to the ATF, are ghost guns. I said, well, that's a lot. And I realized, no, it's 30% of all guns recovered in California were ghost guns. And so I was sitting there trying to find some data saying, well, that's interesting.
A good amount of guns though, right?
Well, if it were true.
Yeah.
So I was sitting there going, well, that's interesting that it's only in a gun-free state, effectively a gun-restrictive state like California. Here's what the truth is. First off, there's no official report. It was a verbal report given to an NBC reporter from the ATF.
Okay.
And what they were saying was 30% of all guns recovered, usually from crimes in California, were unserialized, meaning that also includes guns that were bought out of the back of a truck where they would have scrubbed the serial number, which is all illegal firearms. So that's used as the basis. And I encourage you to research it.
No,
paper thin.
That's literally why I sat down. Like, I don't know that much about this. I wanted to see, because here's the thing, like, I'm on the left, but I'm also pro-gun.
Okay.
Like, I definitely respect people's rights to have a gun. But, I mean, I do feel like something like ghost guns do potentially present a danger, you know?
I understand if potentially.
The idea does, and the idea presents an inherent danger, but at what scale is this actually happening? And I'd have to look into the numbers and statistics to form my own opinion of it. But based on what Crowder is saying right now and where he's the position he's arguing from is it's just not happening at that large of a scale for them to be passing legislation that not only doesn't hit its intended target, but it restricts law-abiding gun owners. So they're adding more restrictions, and the people who are accessing these ghost guns didn't give a damn about restrictions and laws anyway. They're going to keep accessing these ghost guns. They don't give a F about the law enforcement, FBI, ATF for that matter, any of these three-letter agencies. They're going to commit whatever crime they want to commit because they're criminals. Now you got a ghost gun legislation or a ghost gun law that actually isn't stopping people from accessing these ghost guns, but it's stopping people like Steven Crowder and others from customizing their legally purchased weapons.
They present a danger. However, and then for looking into this sort of risk-reward ratio, potential dangers, would you also agree that there's a potential danger in giving the federal government the authority to ban which parts are allowed to be purchased for your firearm?
Sure, yeah. I mean, like, I would have to research it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when you know that it's based on a dishonest premise. You know, I mean, we have a president out there right now who, when he issued these executive actions, if you watch his conference, said we need background checks. You said you're pro-gun. Do you own any firearms?
I don't, no.
So you've never gone and purchased a firearm?
I've never purchased a firearm, no.
Okay. Do you know that they all require background checks?
Yes, yeah. I do know that.
So when you have a president who, listen, I'm not in the business of ascribing motive, but I've got to believe that the president knows that there are background checks for guns. So I've got to believe
that there aren't?
Yes.
I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah, he said it and Barack Obama said it. They said they're the loopholes, the online loophole. If you mean that you buy a gun illegally, well, that's not a loophole. If you mean that you just go and buy a gun outside of a gun show in a trunk, that's not a loophole. Go to any place here that sells firearms, any gun shop, any gun dealer, and they will require a background check and a photo identification.
And that is true, because I hear people talk about the gun show loophole, and it's just like, well, it's not really a loophole. You're illegally purchasing a firearm. You just admitted to illegally purchasing a firearm. There's no loophole. There's no workaround. There's no finessing of the law. It's either you legally purchase it through the proper networks and channels or you don't. Anything outside of that is against the law.
So when he predicates his position on a lie like that, where you go, well, that's not true. Anyone who's purchased a gun knows it's not true. And then they use numbers like a huge percentage of ghost guns. And you go, well, hold on a second. That's not true. And then the package, the totality comes with, and you can't have magazines over 10 rounds. We can no longer sell gun parts and red flag laws, right? That's really concerning to me.
Okay.
And so, I would encourage you to read it. And I appreciate you
definitely read it,
toward the left, but sitting down and having a conversation.
Yeah,
this is the kind of stuff that doesn't happen enough.
The thing, like, I'm to the left of Democrats left. Like,
oh, really?
Yeah.
You're like a communist?
Yeah, he is.
Would you put me in the gulags if you had your choice?
Definitely not, because I also believe in individual liberties. So,
well, you can't be that far left.
No,
it's never existed in any leftist country that's existed.
I would tell you research libertarian socialism. You might learn some things.
I know plenty about libertarian socialism, anarcho-socialism, and I think that these are oxymorons and make no sense.
Really?
Yeah.
I wish I could talk to you about that, because I totally don't think they are. I feel like you can have liberty. You can
pause
have
1 second, because maybe we can talk about this. I just want to make sure no one else wants to talk about it.
You got it.
And then, is anyone else looking to talk about firearms? So this is where George and I wrapped our conversation on common sense gun control. But don't worry, we'll have another segment with George on.
Shout out, educated young man, and definitely articulated himself well at the end of that argument. But man, y'all know what time it is, man.